Relationships today can feel more complicated than ever. In a world filled with endless connection and constant noise, truly understanding others, and even ourselves, can seem like a daunting task. But what if the answers have been with us all along, hidden in ancient wisdom? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. This idea, though centuries old, holds profound relevance for how we approach relationships today. How often do we get swept up by emotions or external expectations, only to lose sight of what truly matters? In this video, we're diving into 15 transformative Stoic truths that will forever change the way you view and navigate your relationships. These aren't just abstract concepts, they're actionable, practical insights that can help you build deeper connections, foster understanding, and find peace amidst the challenges of human interaction. Let's explore how the timeless principles of Stoicism can illuminate the path toward healthier, more meaningful relationships. What does your view of others say about your inner state? Take a moment to think about that. In the Stoic tradition, there's a profound belief that relationships act as mirrors, reflecting not only how we see the world, but how we see ourselves. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously taught that we cannot control external events, only our own minds and perceptions. This principle applies perfectly to the way we perceive and interact with others. If we find ourselves constantly judging, distrusting, or feeling resentment toward those around us, it's often a sign of something unresolved within ourselves. Imagine this: you wake up already feeling stressed, overwhelmed, maybe even a little irritable. Chances are, in that state of mind, any minor annoyance, a partner leaving a dish in the sink, a friend not responding to your message immediately, feels much bigger than it is. But is the problem really the action of the other person, or is it the inner frustration and lack of peace in our own minds amplifying the situation? The Stoics would argue it's the latter. How we react to others is at its core a direct reflection of the condition of our inner world. This is why the Stoics emphasized self-awareness as the cornerstone of all healthy relationships. They believed that before we can truly connect with or understand others, we must first do the difficult work of knowing ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations reminds us to look within, because the answers to the challenges we face often reside there. If we're carrying unresolved anger, insecurity, or fear, that baggage doesn't stay contained. It spills out into how we see and treat those closest to us. On the other hand, when we cultivate inner clarity, patience, and self-acceptance, these qualities naturally shape the way we interact with others. Self-awareness isn't about being overly critical of yourself or dwelling on your flaws. Instead, it's about approaching yourself with honesty and curiosity. What patterns do you notice in your relationships? Are there recurring frustrations or conflicts? Instead of placing all the blame outward, Stoic wisdom invites us to ask, what role am I playing in this dynamic? This is not to let others off the hook for their actions, but to regain control over what is within your power, your own choices, behaviors, and reactions. Think of self-improvement as tending to the soil of a garden. When the soil is enriched, the plants thrive. Similarly, when we nurture our inner selves, practicing patience, kindness, and self-discipline, our relationships tend to flourish. And here's the beauty of this process: as you grow, the way you see others begins to transform. You might notice yourself becoming more compassionate, not because others have changed, but because your own perspective has shifted. You'll begin to see others not as sources of frustration, but as fellow human beings navigating life's challenges, just like you. So, the next time you find yourself frustrated or hurt by someone else's behavior, pause and reflect. What is this moment teaching you about your own inner world? By asking this question and committing to self-awareness, you take the first step toward not only improving your relationships, but also becoming a better, more centered version of yourself. And isn't that a change worth striving for? Have you ever felt your frustration build when someone close to you didn't act the way you hoped they would? Maybe you texted a friend and they didn't reply as quickly as you expected, or at all. Maybe your partner didn't handle a situation the way you thought they should. It's so easy to let this kind of disappointment fester, to replay the moment in your mind and think, why can't they just do things my way? But here's the hard truth the Stoics would have us confront. Expecting others to act exactly as we want is a recipe for frustration, because their behavior is simply not within our control. Epictetus put it most plainly when he said, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." This wisdom is foundational to Stoicism, and when applied to relationships can be life-changing. The Stoics teach us to focus our energy on what is within our control, our own actions, thoughts, and responses, and to let go of the rest. This shift in mindset can help us avoid unnecessary emotional turmoil and foster healthier, more peaceful relationships. Let's break this down. Imagine you've planned an evening out with a close friend. You're looking forward to catching up and enjoying their company, but at the last minute they cancel. Maybe they're exhausted, caught up with work, or simply don't feel up to it. Naturally, you might feel hurt, disappointed, or even angry. You think to yourself, couldn't they prioritize me for once? Don't they realize how much I was looking forward to this? But here's where Stoicism encourages us to pause and reflect. Their decision to cancel isn't yours to control. What you can control is how you respond to it. You can choose to stew in resentment, or you can let it go, understanding that their actions aren't meant to hurt you personally, and that your emotional peace isn't worth sacrificing over something you cannot change. The same principle applies to countless situations we face in relationships. Whether it's how a family member responds to a problem, how a colleague communicates with you, or even how a stranger treats you, the Stoic approach asks, are you trying to control the uncontrollable? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Strength, in this case, means the ability to stay grounded, regardless of what others do or don't do. It's this control over our own minds that liberates us from unnecessary emotional suffering. Now, that's not to say you should tolerate unacceptable behavior or avoid setting boundaries. Letting go of the need to control others doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or avoiding difficult conversations. It simply means recognizing that no amount of pressure, persuasion, or even hope can guarantee that someone will act in the way you desire. When you release this unrealistic expectation, you free yourself from the stress and frustration that come with trying to micromanage others' words and actions. Think about how much energy we waste trying to change people, arguing, overanalyzing, or wishing they would do things differently. What would happen if instead we redirected that energy toward what we can change? Toward improving our communication, practicing patience, or finding gratitude for the things that are going right in the relationship. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up on others. It means giving them the space to be who they are while finding peace in how you choose to respond. So, the next time you catch yourself feeling frustrated with someone, ask yourself, is this something I can control? If the answer is no, take a deep breath and remind yourself that your peace isn't dependent on anyone else. By focusing on what's within your power, your actions, your mindset, and your choices, you not only protect your inner calm, but also create a stronger foundation for healthier, more resilient relationships. Have you ever found yourself wishing someone in your life would change? Maybe a friend who's always late, a partner who doesn't share the same enthusiasm for your hobbies, or a family member who consistently makes choices you just can't understand. It's a familiar struggle, one that can lead to conflict, frustration, or even resentment. But here's a Stoic truth that can transform how you approach these situations. Peace in relationships begins with accepting others as they are, not as you wish them to be. To understand this concept, let's briefly step into history. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus lived as a slave before becoming one of the most influential teachers of his time. He faced countless circumstances he couldn't control, including the behavior of those around him. Yet instead of wasting energy resisting what was out of his power, he embraced acceptance. One of his most famous teachings is this: don't hope that events will turn out as you wish. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. When we apply this wisdom to relationships, it becomes clear that trying to mold others to fit our personal expectations is an exercise in futility and a major source of unnecessary tension. Think about it this way: expecting someone to act against their nature is like being upset that a river flows downstream instead of upstream. It's the river's very essence to move with gravity. Wouldn't it make more sense to work with its flow rather than against it? Stoicism teaches that living in harmony with nature applies not only to the natural world but to human nature as well. People have their own personalities, experiences, and values that shape who they are. While we can influence and guide at times, we cannot force someone to change, not without harming the relationship or our peace of mind. Consider a relatable example. Perhaps you're someone who thrives on punctuality and careful planning, but your best friend is the type who arrives late and goes with the flow. If you constantly focus on the ways they fail to meet your standards, you'll likely feel frustrated every time you interact with them. That frustration builds a wall of resentment, chipping away at your connection. But what if instead you accepted their tendency to be tardy as part of who they are? Sure, you could still set boundaries, like asking them to meet you at a specific time when it's really important, but the key is releasing the inner expectation that they should behave differently. By doing so, you free yourself from the mental weight of unfulfilled wishes and make space to appreciate their unique qualities, their sense of humor, their kindness, or their creativity. This doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior or abandoning your own needs. Boundaries are crucial in any relationship, but acceptance allows you to focus on what's right in the relationship rather than endlessly trying to fix what you think is wrong. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in Meditations that you will never find a person who can live up to your expectations, and you'd be foolish to expect it. The truth is, no one is perfect. Just as you'd want someone to accept your flaws, imperfections, and quirks, others deserve the same grace and understanding. So how can you practice this? Start by examining your expectations of the people closest to you. Are your frustrations rooted in a genuine issue, or are they a reflection of the gap between who they are and who you want them to be? Asking yourself these questions fosters greater self-awareness, and when you stop resisting reality, when you accept others for who they are, you'll find that your relationships become lighter, freer, and ultimately more fulfilling. In choosing acceptance, you're not giving up on relationships, you're giving them space to grow authentically. And in that space, you might discover something unexpected, a deeper connection that flourishes when you meet people where they are, rather than where you think they should be. Isn't that what true harmony looks like? Here's a bold thought: no one can make you truly happy. Not your partner, not your closest friend, not your family, and certainly not the approval of others. This might feel counterintuitive, even uncomfortable, but it's a truth at the heart of Stoic philosophy. Your happiness is not dependent on anyone else. Genuine contentment comes from within. It is a state of mind, not a gift others can give you. The sooner we internalize this, the freer and more fulfilled we become. The Stoics believed that relying on others for happiness is like building a house on shaky ground. If your contentment depends on anyone outside of yourself, then you hand over control of your well-being to forces you can't always predict or influence. Relationships can bring joy, but they're not immune to conflict, disappointment, or change. What happens if the person you relied on for happiness lets you down? Or if circumstances pull them away from your life? If your sense of self-worth and peace is tied to someone else, you risk losing your foundation when they're no longer there. Seneca, one of the most renowned Stoics, offers timeless wisdom on this. He said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have." It's a reminder that tranquility isn't something we can find in others, it's something we create within ourselves. Stoic philosophy teaches self-sufficiency, the idea that we already possess everything we need to achieve peace of mind. The key lies in understanding that fulfillment doesn't come from external circumstances, it comes from mastering our perceptions, desires, and emotions. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or rejecting relationships. Stoics valued deep, meaningful connections with others. They simply understood that true strength and happiness cannot be outsourced. Imagine this: if your happiness depends entirely on how your partner treats you or how much attention your friends give you, then your emotional well-being will always be at the mercy of their actions. But when you take responsibility for your own contentment, you regain your autonomy. You'll enjoy relationships for what they are without expecting them to fill an emotional void. So how can we cultivate this inner fulfillment? First, practice gratitude. The Stoics often reflected on the simple things in life: a warm meal, the beauty of nature, the ability to think and grow. Gratitude shifts the focus from what's lacking to what's present, helping you see that happiness isn't something you need to chase. Second, embrace solitude. Spend time alone, not in isolation, but in self-reflection. Get to know yourself without distractions. What brings you joy? What values guide you? By understanding yourself, you'll be less likely to seek validation from others. Third, let go of excessive expectations. Seneca reminds us that tranquility comes when we free ourselves from the constant pursuit of things outside our control. This includes letting go of the idea that others are responsible for how we feel. Think of inner happiness as a wellspring. Relationships are like streams that flow into it. They add richness and beauty to the water, but the wellspring itself must have depth or it will run dry in their absence. When you take the time to nurture that inner well, you gain a sense of freedom and resilience. You realize joy doesn't depend on who's around you or what they do, but on your own perspective and choices. So ask yourself, are you depending on someone else for your happiness? What might change if you reclaim that responsibility for yourself? By embracing the Stoic principle of self-sufficiency, you unlock a profound truth. When you stop looking outward for fulfillment, you discover the incredible peace and strength that's been within you all along. Picture this: you've just had a heated argument with a close friend. They accused you of being distant, and you felt blindsided, defensive, maybe even hurt. In your mind, you're thinking, why would they say that? I've been so overwhelmed lately, and they should know that. It's a situation most of us have faced, a moment of misunderstanding that spirals into frustration or conflict. But now, pause for a moment and imagine stepping outside of yourself. What if, instead of focusing on your own hurt feelings, you asked, why would they feel this way? What's going on in their world that might have led to this reaction? This practice, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, isn't just an act of kindness, it's a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations *, whenever someone has done wrong by you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it. For when you see that, you will feel compassion rather than astonishment or anger. In other words, every action, no matter how hurtful or frustrating it may seem, comes from a place of reasoning within that person. They have their own perspective, shaped by their experiences, fears, and emotions. When we take a step back and try to understand their motivations, we open the door to empathy and reduce our own emotional turmoil in the process. Let's revisit the scenario with your friend. Instead of focusing on how unfair their accusation felt, practicing Stoic empathy invites you to consider what might have led to their outburst. Perhaps they've been feeling neglected, not because of anything you intentionally did wrong, but because they've been struggling themselves, stressed, lonely, or overwhelmed. Their reaction might have little to do with you personally and more to do with an unmet need they haven't been able to communicate. By shifting your perspective to consider their reasoning, you instantly soften the edges of your frustration. You realize their actions aren't about attacking you, but are instead an expression of their own inner conflict. Practicing empathy in this way doesn't mean brushing aside poor behavior or excusing harm. It's not about suppressing your feelings or avoiding confrontation. Instead, it's about creating a foundation of understanding that helps you respond with clarity and compassion, rather than reacting impulsively with anger or judgment. Empathy dissolves the walls we build in moments of misunderstanding, making it easier to have honest conversations and find solutions. One of the most useful tools for practicing empathy in conflicts is asking questions, not just outwardly but within yourself. When someone's behavior frustrates you, pause and ask, what might they be feeling or experiencing right now? What might they be afraid of? How do they see the situation differently from me? These questions reframe the moment, pulling your attention away from your emotions and encouraging you to explore theirs. For example, imagine a coworker sharply criticizes your work in a team meeting. Your initial reaction might be to feel embarrassed or angry, but what if you paused and asked yourself, where is this coming from? Are they feeling pressure from our boss? Are they stressed about the project's timeline? With this mindset, instead of snapping back or holding a grudge, you could respond constructively, asking them afterward, I noticed you seemed concerned about my part of the project. Can we go over it together to make sure it's on track? This approach not only shows grace but often diffuses tension and builds trust. Of course, empathy is easier said than done, especially in the heat of the moment. It takes practice and patience, but each time you choose to try to see the world through someone else's eyes, you're not just improving your relationships, you're strengthening your own self-control and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the opinions and actions of others are not in our control, but how we interpret and respond to them always is. By choosing to understand instead of judge, you reclaim your peace even in difficult situations. So the next time conflict arises, take a breath and step back. Ask yourself, what might they be going through? How do they see this moment differently than I do? You might be surprised by how quickly frustration fades and clarity takes its place. This is the power of empathy, a Stoic tool that strengthens not only our bonds with others, but also our own emotional resilience. Can you love deeply without becoming attached? It's a question that feels almost paradoxical, especially in a culture that often equates love with possession or dependency. How many times have we heard phrases like, I can't live without you, or you complete me? While these sentiments sound romantic, Stoic philosophy challenges us to rethink the balance between love and independence. What would it look like to love someone fully cherishing their presence and contribution to your life, without clinging to them as the source of your identity or happiness? The Stoics believed that love should never come at the cost of losing yourself. Epictetus offers a strikingly practical and at first glance uncomfortable reflection on this idea. He teaches us to hold the understanding that the people we love are mortal, transient, and beyond our ultimate control. In his Discourses he advises, when you are kissing your child or your wife, say to yourself, you are kissing a mortal. At first, this might sound cold or detached, but it's not about loving less, it's about loving with perspective. By embracing the impermanence of everything, we're reminded to appreciate rather than possess those we care about. Because the truth is, attachment in the Stoic sense isn't love, it's dependency. And dependency can often lead to fear, jealousy, or even an unhealthy loss of self. Now, let's clarify, the Stoics weren't against love. They didn't advocate for suppressing emotions or avoiding meaningful relationships. Instead, they encouraged us to love in a way that's grounded and resilient. Picture this, you're standing in a garden admiring a beautiful flower. You care for it, water it, and appreciate its vibrance, but you know you don't own that flower. You've simply been given the gift of witnessing its beauty for as long as it blooms. This is how the Stoics approach love, not as something to hold onto tightly out of fear, but as something to treasure in the moment with gratitude, knowing that all things in life, including relationships, are temporary. When love becomes attachment, we can start to lose the balance between care for others and care for ourselves. For example, imagine a relationship where one person begins to rely entirely on the other for their sense of worth, happiness, or direction. Over time, that kind of dependency can create resentment, pressure, and even guilt. Healthy love, on the other hand, allows room for both connection and individuality. The Stoics understood that while relationships are one of life's greatest joys, they should never compromise your ability to stand on your own. True love is not control or possession. It's the freedom to support and celebrate each other as separate, whole individuals. So how do we cultivate love without attachment? It starts with gratitude. Take a moment to truly appreciate the people in your life for who they are, rather than who you want them to be or what role they serve in your world. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in Meditations to be grateful for every interaction, no matter how fleeting, because it enriches our experience of being alive. Gratitude keeps us grounded in the present, allowing us to cherish relationships without clinging to them out of fear of loss. Next, reflect on your own sense of self. Ask yourself, am I bringing my whole, independent self to this relationship? Or am I relying too much on the other person to fill gaps in my identity or happiness? The Stoics believed that true strength comes from self-sufficiency, knowing that your inner peace is yours to cultivate, not dependent on anyone else. When you nurture your own growth, values, and sense of purpose, you're able to love others more fully because you're not weighed down by fear or insecurity. Finally, embrace the reality of change. The Stoics remind us that everything in life is impermanent, including the people we love. Rather than seeing this as a source of sadness, it's a call to live and love more fully today. When we release the need to control or hold on too tightly, we find a deeper, freer kind of connection, the kind that doesn't fear loss but celebrates the time we have together. So ask yourself, are you loving with gratitude and freedom, or are you holding on out of a desire for control or permanence? By practicing love without attachment, you not only deepen your relationships but also create space for both you and the people you care about to grow individually and together. After all, isn't love at its best when it allows us to thrive? How often do we judge without full understanding? Think about it. How many times have you made assumptions about someone's actions, words, or intentions, only to later realize you didn't have the whole picture? Maybe you thought a friend was ignoring your messages, only to find out they were overwhelmed with personal challenges. Or perhaps you judged a stranger for behaving rudely, not knowing the kind of day they were having. Snap judgments are something we all fall into from time to time. but the Stoics believed these quick assumptions are a major source of unnecessary conflict and misunderstanding in our relationships. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations reminds us of the power of focusing on what is actually happening, not on the story we create around it. He wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. This advice is profound, especially when it comes to how we interact with others. The Stoics encouraged us to approach relationships with humility, recognizing that we rarely, if ever, have all the facts. Judging harshly, especially without understanding someone's full context, often says more about us, our biases, our impatience, than it does about the other person. Let's put this into perspective with an example. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your immediate reaction might be anger or frustration, thinking, "How selfish." They don't care about anyone else, but do you actually know what prompted their actions? Maybe they're rushing to a hospital or overwhelmed with stress and simply made a mistake. The truth is, you don't know. By jumping to conclusions, you've added unnecessary stress and negativity to your own day, all based on an interpretation, not a fact. Stoicism teaches us to pause in moments like these and remind ourselves that we don't have the full story. So how can we apply this Stoic principle of withholding judgment in our everyday relationships? First, practice reframing your thoughts. The next time you feel yourself making a judgment about someone, stop and ask, "Do I really know all there is to know about this situation? What evidence do I have to support my assumption?" This simple pause allows you to separate your initial emotion from the actual facts, creating space for greater understanding and patience. Second, focus on compassion. Instead of assuming the worst, try assuming the best. For instance, if a friend forgets to call you back, instead of thinking, "They don't care about me," consider, "They're probably busy or dealing with something important." This small shift in perspective can dramatically reduce unnecessary conflict and negative emotions. Seneca went so far as to say, "Whenever we suffer, we should remember that it is not the person who offends us who causes the pain, but our own judgment of the offense." By choosing to approach situations with compassion, you free yourself from the emotional weight of harsh judgments. And finally, understand that withholding judgment doesn't mean ignoring harmful behavior or being naive. It's not about excusing mistreatment or avoiding accountability. Instead, it's about responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. For example, if a coworker snaps at you during a meeting, you don't need to immediately assume they dislike you or hold a grudge. Withhold judgment until you've had a chance to calmly address the situation and better understand their perspective. The Stoics recognize that harsh judgment often erodes the trust and harmony that relationships rely on. When we place blame or make assumptions too quickly, we close ourselves off to deeper understanding and resolution. By practicing patience and focusing on facts, we foster more meaningful connections and contribute to a world where empathy outweighs criticism. So, the next time you find yourself quick to judge someone, pause and ask yourself, "Am I seeing the full picture or just a fragment of it?" By letting go of snap judgments, you're not just improving your relationships, you're also creating a calmer, more centered version of yourself. And isn't that a perspective worth practicing? How do you cope when a relationship ends? Whether it's the loss of a loved one, the end of a romantic partnership, or the natural drifting apart of a friendship, the pain can feel overwhelming. Loss in any form is one of the hardest things we face as humans, but the Stoics, with their profound understanding of life's impermanence, offer us a way to process these difficult moments with strength and wisdom. They teach us that while loss is inevitable, it doesn't have to break us. In fact, it can be an opportunity to grow stronger. The Stoics believed deeply in reflecting on the impermanence of everything, including relationships. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively on this, reminding us that nothing we love is truly ours to keep forever. He said, "We are not given ownership of anything, only stewardship." This means that the people we cherish are not possessions but gifts, lent to us by life for an uncertain amount of time. By remembering this, we prepare our minds for the reality that loss is not a matter of asterisk if asterisk but asterisk when asterisk. And while this may sound somber, it's not meant to discourage us, it's meant to help us fully appreciate the relationships we have while they last. Take a moment to consider this. How much more would you savor each moment with someone if you consciously acknowledge that your time together is finite? Instead of taking them for granted or worrying about what might happen in the future, you'd focus on enjoying the present. Marcus Aurelius urges us to live with this mindset, writing, "Think of yourself as dead." You have lived your life, now take what's left and live it properly. This perspective isn't about being morbid, it's about treating time and the people in our lives as precious and irreplaceable. But when the inevitable loss does come, as it always will, how do we find resilience? For the Stoics, resilience begins with acceptance. Fighting against reality, wishing things were different or clinging to what has already passed, only deepens our suffering. Instead, they teach us to align our minds with the natural order of life. Seneca advised, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." In other words, loss is not an isolated event, it's part of the human experience. By accepting this, we can face it with greater strength and composure. Imagine a tree in the middle of a storm. Its branches sway and bend with the wind, but it doesn't break. This flexibility, this willingness to move with the forces of nature rather than against them, is what allows the tree to endure. The same principle applies to us in moments of loss. Resilience doesn't mean pretending we're unaffected. It means bending, grieving, and eventually finding balance again. The Stoics also saw loss as an opportunity for growth. While the pain is real and should never be dismissed, it's through challenges that we develop inner strength and wisdom. When we lose something or someone, we're invited to reflect on what they brought to our lives and what lessons we can carry forward. Seneca often wrote about how loss can teach us gratitude, self-reliance, and perspective. By recognizing what we've gained from a relationship, even if it has ended, we honor its impact on us without becoming consumed by its absence. Finally, the Stoics encourage us to see endings as natural and even meaningful. Just as seasons change and rivers flow, relationships too have their courses. Some last for decades, while others are brief but impactful. By viewing endings as part of life's natural rhythm, we can find peace in knowing that every relationship, whether enduring or fleeting, serves a purpose. It helps us grow, teaches us something, or shapes who we are. So, the next time you face loss, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I honor what was while embracing what is to come? By reflecting on life's impermanence and adopting the Stoic mindset, you can find resilience even in the face of heartache. Loss is never easy, but it doesn't have to leave you broken instead. It can leave you stronger, wiser, and more grateful for the relationships that continue to shape your life. Communication isn't just a skill, it's a virtue. Think about that for a moment. In relationships, we often focus on what we say, but how often do we consider why we're saying it? Are our words coming from a place of clarity and intention, or are they fueled by impulse, frustration, or simply the need to fill silence? Stoic philosophy teaches that communication isn't just about exchanging words, it's about using speech as a tool for building understanding, fostering harmony, and resolving conflict. When we approach communication as a virtue, we elevate it from mere conversation to a purposeful and mindful act. Epictetus offers timeless advice on this matter. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This simple but profound observation captures the Stoic emphasis on thoughtful communication. For the Stoics, words were not to be wasted or spoken carelessly. Instead, they should be used sparingly with intention and precision. The driving principle here is that words carry power. They can heal or harm, unite or divide. And just like any other power, they must be used responsibly. Let's start with one of the key aspects of Stoic communication: clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in Meditations to speak plainly and without ostentation. In today's fast-paced world where misunderstandings can quickly escalate, clarity is more important than ever. Whether you're addressing a conflict or sharing your feelings, being clear about your intentions and message is essential. For example, instead of dancing around an issue with implied frustrations or vague remarks, Stoic communication encourages us to say directly but calmly, "I feel hurt because of what happened. Can we talk about it?" This approach reduces confusion and creates space for a constructive dialogue. Another cornerstone of Stoic communication is honesty. But honesty, as the Stoics practiced it, is not about brutal candor or speaking without a filter. It's about truth paired with kindness. Imagine you're giving feedback to a close friend or partner. Instead of criticizing harshly, Stoicism would encourage you to come from a place of constructive intent. For instance, instead of saying, "You always dismiss my ideas, you're so inconsiderate," you might say, "Sometimes I feel unheard during our conversations. I'd love for us to work on that together." The truth is still there, but it's delivered in a way that encourages connection rather than defensiveness. And kindness, this is where Stoic wisdom truly shines. The Stoics believed in treating others with dignity and respect, even when emotions run high. Epictetus warns us to think before speaking, reminding us that once words are said, they cannot be taken back. Keeping this in mind can help prevent regret or unnecessary harm. Consider a heated argument with a friend or loved one. In the moment, it might feel satisfying to say something cutting, something that asserts your position and wins the argument. But Stoicism reminds us that this is not a true victory. Real strength lies in pausing, choosing your words carefully, and responding in a way that preserves the relationship rather than damaging it. So, how can we improve our communication in line with Stoic principles? First, listen more. Before responding, really hear what the other person is saying, not just their words, but the emotions and intentions behind them. This not only prevents misunderstandings, but also shows genuine respect. Second, take a moment to reflect before you speak. Ask yourself, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to any of these questions is no, reconsider your words. Lastly, practice brevity. The Stoics valued succinct, purposeful communication, believing that unnecessary words often dilute the message. Keep your speech focused and meaningful, ensuring that each word serves a purpose. By treating communication as a virtue, you transform the way you engage with others. It becomes less about reacting and more about connecting, more about understanding and less about proving a point. So, the next time you're in a conversation, pause and ask yourself, am I using my words to build or to break? Stoicism gives us the tools to make words work as bridges rather than barriers, and that shift can change the way we experience every relationship in our lives. Have you ever thought of your relationships as a training ground for your character? It's a powerful shift in perspective. So often, we view the challenges in our relationships, arguments, misunderstandings, or differences in values as obstacles to happiness. But the Stoics teach us to see these moments differently. What if, instead of resenting the friction, we saw it as an opportunity to grow? What if every interaction, no matter how difficult, was a chance to practice virtues like patience, kindness, and humility? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This simple but profound idea reminds us that the very challenges we face in relationships can become catalysts for our growth. Let's consider patience. How many times have you felt frustration rise when someone close to you didn't meet your expectations? Maybe they were late, interrupted you, or didn't fulfill a promise. In moments like these, we have a choice. We can let frustration take over, reacting impulsively and deepening the conflict, or we can see the moment for what it truly is, a practice session for patience. The Stoics believed that virtues aren't just ideals, they are habits developed through consistent practice. Each time you pause, take a breath, and choose to respond calmly instead of reacting with anger, you strengthen your capacity for patience. Over time, these small choices accumulate, shaping you into someone who is not easily rattled by life's inconveniences. Now let's talk about kindness. It's easy to be kind when things are going well, but what about when someone criticizes you, disappoints you, or pushes your buttons? These moments test the depth of your kindness. Stoicism challenges us to remember that we can't control how others act, but we can always control how we respond. Imagine a heated argument with a loved one. They're upset, their words sharp, and their tone harsh. The knee-jerk reaction might be to snap back, but what if you use the moment as a chance to practice kindness? What if you chose to respond with understanding instead of escalating the tension? Not only does this approach often diffuse the situation, but it also reinforces your ability to act with grace in the face of difficulty. Humility, too, is a virtue sharpened in relationships. The Stoics remind us that none of us is perfect, we are all works in progress. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on his own flaws and his ongoing effort to align with his values, writing, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. For it is the truth I seek." Relationships constantly present opportunities for humility. Maybe it's admitting when you've made a mistake, listening instead of dominating the conversation, or recognizing that someone else's perspective, even if you don't agree with it, has value. Humility allows us to let go of pride and ego, making space for deeper understanding and connection. Reframing challenges in relationships as opportunities to practice these virtues doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or tolerating harmful behavior. Boundaries are still important, but it does mean approaching difficulties with the mindset that they are here to teach you something, not just to inconvenience you. Instead of thinking, "Why do they have to be so difficult?" try asking yourself, "What is this situation teaching me about myself? How can I grow through this?" For example, if you're upset because a friend didn't show up for an important event, instead of fixating on their behavior, reflect on how you can respond in a way that embodies patience and understanding. Maybe it's a calm conversation where you express your feelings without accusation. Maybe it's practicing forgiveness while reinforcing your boundaries. Either way, the focus is on how you can grow, not on trying to control them. In truth, every relationship, whether harmonious or challenging, is a mirror. It reflects back to us areas where we can evolve, pushing us toward greater self-awareness and resilience. So, the next time you face a difficulty in a relationship, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what virtue can I practice here? By seeing relationships as a training ground for patience, kindness, and humility, you transform challenges into lessons and obstacles into stepping stones. And slowly but surely, you become the person you aspire to be. Isn't that a perspective worth embracing? Have you ever found yourself replaying a moment in your head again and again? Maybe someone betrayed your trust, said something cruel, or let you down when you needed them most. It's natural to feel hurt in these situations, but the longer you hold onto that resentment, rehearsing the pain, keeping the grudge alive, the heavier it becomes. It's like carrying a bag of stones on your back. At first, it might seem manageable, but over time, the weight grows unbearable, and it's you, not the person who hurt you, who suffers the most. The Stoics understood this all too well. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, emphasized that clinging to anger or resentment only poisons the one holding it. He advised, "A wise man is out of reach of insults, and anyone who thinks they can harm him is mistaken. If you want to have peace of mind, you must forgive." For the Stoics, forgiveness wasn't just about letting someone else off the hook. It was about setting yourself free. When you hold onto resentment, you give that person or that moment power over your peace of mind. It's like shackling yourself to the past and then wondering why you can't move forward. Let's break this down. Imagine you're upset with a friend who cancelled plans at the last minute. Days later, you're still irritated, replaying the situation in your mind. Meanwhile, your friend has already moved on. They might not even realize you're still hurt. Who's burdened by this resentment? You are. The Stoics would urge you to step back and ask yourself, what am I gaining by holding onto this grudge? The answer almost always is nothing. Resentment doesn't fix the situation or change the past. It only prolongs your own suffering. Seneca's teachings encourage us to recognize that humans are flawed, ourselves included. He often reflected on the idea that everyone at some point makes mistakes, acts out of ignorance, or fails to meet someone else's expectations. By acknowledging this shared fallibility, we can approach forgiveness with a greater sense of humility. Have you ever unintentionally hurt someone only to wish for their forgiveness? If we hope to be forgiven when we falter, then surely we should extend that same grace to others. Letting go of resentment doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior or ignoring your feelings. It's about reclaiming your emotional balance and refusing to let your past pain dictate your present. Think of it as choosing peace over punishment. Holding on to anger is, as the saying goes, like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. By forgiving, you release that toxicity and create space for emotional clarity and healing. So how can we apply this Stoic principle in our relationships? Start by reflecting on how resentment affects your well-being and the connection you have with others. Ask yourself, is the grudge you're holding creating distance or strain in your relationships? Is it draining your energy that could be better spent on things you value? The Stoics believed that understanding the cost of negative emotions is the first step toward letting them go. Next, practice perspective. Instead of focusing on how someone hurt you, try to understand their motivations or circumstances. Were they acting out of fear, ignorance, or their own pain? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it can help you detach from the emotional charge of the situation. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to consider the humanity of others, writing, "Whenever another's faults offend you, turn to your own and reflect, we too are human." Finally, remind yourself of what you can and cannot control. You can't change the actions of others or even the pain they may have caused, but you can always choose how you respond. Forgiveness is within your power. It's a conscious decision to release the grip of anger and make space for peace. In the end, letting go of resentment is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It's not about forgetting what happened. It's about refusing to let it define you. By practicing forgiveness in the Stoic sense, you take a step toward freedom, serenity, and healthier, more fulfilling relationships. So ask yourself, what are you holding onto, and what might change if you simply let it go? What matters more in your relationships, quantity or depth? In a world filled with social media followers, networking events, and constant connection, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that more is better. The more friends you have, the fuller your life must be, right? The Stoics, however, would strongly disagree. They believed that when it comes to relationships, quality always outweighs quantity. 1,000 shallow connections will never compare to one or two truly meaningful bonds that bring wisdom, support, and mutual growth. Epictetus, one of the leading Stoic philosophers, put it beautifully when he said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best." This simple advice carries profound implications. It's a call to carefully consider who you allow into your life and how much energy you invest in them. The Stoics understood that time and attention are limited resources. Instead of spreading these resources thin across a sea of superficial connections, they encouraged focusing on a few relationships where trust, respect, and depth could flourish. Think about your own life for a moment. How many people do you interact with regularly? Now ask yourself how many of those interactions feel truly meaningful. Would you rather spend an evening with 100 acquaintances engaging in small talk that leaves you feeling exhausted, or with one close friend having a deep, authentic conversation that nourishes your soul? The Stoics urged us to choose the latter, not because they dismissed the value of being friendly or polite, but because they recognized the limitations of time and energy. Shallow relationships rarely bring lasting joy or wisdom. They often leave us feeling empty, while meaningful connections enrich our lives. But how do we determine which relationships to nurture? The Stoics believed in choosing companions wisely. For Epictetus, this wasn't a matter of exclusivity or elitism, but of shared values and mutual growth. He warned against surrounding yourself with people who encourage vice, indulge in gossip, or pull you away from your principles. Instead, he advised seeking out those who inspire you to be better, those who challenge you to grow, act with integrity, and live according to your values. Imagine, for example, a friend who constantly complains, criticizes others, or drags you down with negativity. Compare that to someone who uplifts you with their optimism, encourages you to achieve your goals, and holds you accountable to the best version of yourself. The Stoic approach isn't about cutting people off at the first sign of negativity, but about thoughtfully considering whether a relationship adds value to your life or undermines your growth. It's about asking, does this relationship leave me feeling more aligned with who I want to be? The question of quality over quantity isn't limited to friendships. It applies to family, romantic relationships, and even professional connections. The Stoics remind us that any relationship worth keeping requires effort, mutual respect, and alignment in values. Depth doesn't happen by accident. It's cultivated through empathy, shared experiences, and honest communication. And while it's tempting to feel validated by having a long list of contacts or friends, true fulfillment comes from knowing that the relationships you do have are built on something real. So take a moment to evaluate your relationships. Are there people in your life with whom you can be your true self without pretense or judgment? Are there relationships that feel transactional or one-sided, leaving you drained rather than energized? By focusing on quality, you'll create space for the connections that truly matter, the ones that bring wisdom, joy, and growth to your journey. The Stoics remind us that life is fleeting. Your time is precious. Don't waste it chasing numbers or relationships that lack substance. Instead, invest in depth, authenticity, and mutual understanding. After all, isn't life richer when our connections truly nourish the soul? Have you ever found yourself physically present with someone but mentally somewhere else? Maybe you're with a loved one, nodding along to the conversation, but your mind is preoccupied thinking about a deadline, scrolling through your phone, or replaying something that happened earlier in the day. It's a scene that's all too common in the modern world where distractions seem endless, but have you ever stopped to consider the cost of these moments? What do we lose when we're not fully present with the people who matter to us? The Stoics understood the value of presence long before smartphones and constant notifications existed. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations reflected on the importance of living fully in the moment. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." This wasn't just advice for seizing the day, it was a reminder that the present moment is the only thing we truly have. When we allow our attention to drift to the past or future, or let ourselves be consumed by distractions, we rob ourselves and those around us of the opportunity for genuine connection. And in relationships, those missed moments can quietly erode intimacy and trust. Imagine this scenario: you're sitting at dinner with a close friend, and as they're telling you about a challenge they're facing, you glance down at your phone to check a message. It's a tiny moment, but its impact can be significant. To your friend, it might signal that your attention isn't fully with them, that their words aren't as important as whatever's happening on your screen. Over time, these small distractions can add up, creating distance where there was once closeness. Being present is not just a courtesy, it's a vital ingredient for meaningful relationships. So, what does being present actually look like in practice? First, it means setting aside distractions. Put the phone down, close the laptop, and focus solely on the person in front of you. Even small gestures like maintaining eye contact and leaning in slightly as someone speaks can signal that you're fully engaged. Active listening is another essential part of presence. This means truly hearing what the other person is saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak or formulating a response in your head. Reflect on their words, ask thoughtful questions, and show that you're invested in understanding their perspective. For example, instead of giving generic responses like, "That's tough," try something like, "It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed by that situation. How can I support you?" This kind of mindful engagement not only makes the other person feel valued, but also deepens your connection by fostering trust and empathy. Marcus Aurelius also reminds us that focusing on the present isn't just about avoiding physical distractions. It's about mentally letting go of unnecessary burdens that pull us away from the here and now. How often do we carry the weight of past regrets or future anxieties into our interactions? Maybe you're still upset about something that happened earlier, or you're stressed about tomorrow's to-do list. When you bring that mental noise into your relationships, it prevents you from fully experiencing the moment at hand. To counter this, Stoic practices like journaling or mindfulness meditation can help you clear your mind and center yourself before engaging with others. Another helpful practice is to set an intention before a conversation. This could be something as simple as thinking, "I want this time to be about truly connecting and supporting this person," or "I'm going to focus on listening with an open mind." Setting these small mental reminders helps you navigate conversations with clarity and purpose, ensuring that your presence adds value rather than distraction. Being present in relationships isn't always easy, especially in a world filled with constant demands for our attention, but it's one of the most powerful ways to show someone you care. When you're fully present, you're telling the other person, "You matter to me, what you're saying and feeling is important." Over time, this practice can transform not only your relationships, but also your own sense of connection to the people and moments in your life. So the next time you're with a loved one, challenge yourself to truly be there, not just in body, but in mind and spirit. Because in the end, the most meaningful relationships are built not on grand gestures, but on the countless small moments when we chose to be fully present, offering our undivided attention as the ultimate gift. How often do we take the people in our lives for granted? It's a sobering thought, isn't it? The truth is, in the daily rhythm of life, we can easily forget to truly appreciate the relationships that mean the most to us. We get caught up in routines, conflicts, or even minor irritations, losing sight of just how fortunate we are to have certain people in our lives. But what if we consciously chose to flip that perspective? What if we made gratitude a central practice in our relationships? The Stoics believed that gratitude wasn't just a virtue but a powerful tool to deepen human connection and enhance our overall sense of peace and fulfillment. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, emphasized the importance of gratitude in many of his writings. He taught us that life is fleeting and unpredictable, so we must make the most of what we have in the present. In his words, we must indulge the time we have left and live it as though we borrowed it. This idea isn't just about being grateful for life itself, but for the people who share our journey. Seneca understood that relationships are among life's greatest treasures, and the best way to honor them is by appreciating them fully while we can. Practicing gratitude in relationships begins with shifting your mindset. Instead of focusing on what you wish were different about someone, like their habits, mistakes, or flaws, start focusing on what you value about them. For example, your friend might occasionally forget to check in, but they're also the person who always shows up when it truly matters. Your partner might have quirks that annoy you, but they're also the person who supports your dreams and brings joy into your life. Gratitude means zooming out, seeing the bigger picture, and recognizing the good that outweighs the occasional inconveniences. The Stoics weren't content to let gratitude remain a passive feeling. They believed in making it an active, deliberate practice. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on what he was thankful for, writing in his Meditations about the virtues of the people in his life and the lessons they taught him. This simple act of taking time to reflect on the positive qualities of those around you can profoundly shift your perspective. It's a practice that reminds you to appreciate not only what people do for you, but who they are at their core. In practical terms, you can incorporate gratitude into your relationships by expressing it regularly. When was the last time you told a friend how much you value their friendship, or thanked a family member for all the ways they've supported you? Small acts of acknowledgement, whether it's a heartfelt thank you, a kind note, or even a simple compliment, can make a significant impact. It's amazing how strengthened a bond can become when both people feel seen and appreciated. Gratitude also helps when relationships hit a rough patch. Let's face it, no relationship is without its challenges, but even in moments of conflict or frustration, practicing gratitude can anchor you. Instead of focusing solely on the irritation of the moment, take a step back and remind yourself of the bigger picture. Ask yourself, what do I appreciate about this person? What have they brought to my life? This doesn't erase the conflict, but it softens your perspective, making it easier to approach the situation with compassion and understanding. Another way to cultivate gratitude is by reflecting daily on the people who enrich your life. At the end of the day, ask yourself, who made an impact on me today? Who showed me kindness, taught me something, or simply made me smile? By regularly reflecting on these moments, you train your mind to notice the good in others, reinforcing positive feelings toward the people in your life. Ultimately, gratitude in relationships is about presence and acknowledgement. It's about slowing down and truly seeing the people around you, not just for what they do, but for who they are. It's about recognizing that every interaction, every shared moment, is a gift that won't last forever. The Stoics remind us that nothing in life is guaranteed, and that includes relationships. By practicing gratitude, you not only strengthen your bonds with others, but also enrich your own experience of life. So ask yourself, who are the people you're grateful for, and how can you show them that today? How would your relationships change if you truly embraced their temporary nature? It's not an easy question to confront. After all, most of us move through life trying to avoid thinking about endings, whether it's the end of a romance, a friendship, or even life itself. Yet the Stoics believed that the impermanence of relationships isn't something to fear. Instead, it's a reality that can help us love more deeply, connect more meaningfully, and appreciate those around us in ways we might otherwise overlook. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught us to remember the transient nature of all things, including the people we love. He said, "What you love has been given to you for the present, not forever. Take what time you are given with it and hold it as you would a fragile cup." This isn't a call to detach or love less, it's the opposite. By fully acknowledging that every relationship is finite, we can become more present, more grateful, and more intentional in how we spend our time with others. Think about it for a moment. How often do we take our relationships for granted, assuming we'll always have more opportunities to make things right, to say, "I love you," or to simply enjoy someone's company? But life doesn't make those guarantees. Friends move away, family members grow older, and even the most enduring bonds can change over time. While this reality might seem harsh, the Stoics believed it holds a profound truth. The limited nature of relationships is what makes them so precious. When you recognize that your time with someone is not infinite, you're reminded to make it count. Imagine if every hug, every conversation, every shared laugh was treated as if it could be the last. How would that change the way you interact with the people you care about? Instead of rushing through a conversation distracted by your phone, you might choose to truly listen and engage. Instead of leaving an argument unresolved, you might find the courage to apologize or forgive. Knowing that your time together is finite can inspire you to let go of petty disagreements, to cherish even the mundane moments, and to prioritize what truly matters: connection, kindness, and presence. The Stoics also understood that embracing impermanence isn't just about appreciating the people we love. It's also about letting go when the time comes. Whether it's a breakup, a falling out, or the loss of someone we hold dear, the pain of an ending is inevitable. But the Stoics would remind us that this pain is part of the natural order of life. Epictetus taught, "Do not say, 'I have lost it,' but instead, 'I have given it back.'" This shift in perspective helps us see relationships not as things we own, but as gifts we are fortunate to experience for however long they last. By embracing the impermanence of relationships, we can also free ourselves from clinging or fearing loss. Instead of trying to control or hold onto people, we can love them freely without conditions or expectations. This kind of love, the kind that accepts the transient nature of life, is one of the most profound and liberating things we can offer both ourselves and others. It's a love that says, "I cherish this moment and I release it when the time comes." So how can we put this Stoic truth into practice? Start by reflecting on the people in your life today. What would you do differently if you truly embraced the idea that your time with them is temporary? Maybe you'd reach out to a friend you've lost touch with, thank a mentor for their guidance, or simply spend a little more quality time with your family. Whatever it is, let the recognition of impermanence remind you to show up fully for the relationships that matter. In the end, the lesson is clear. Relationships are temporary, and that's what makes them beautiful. Instead of resisting this truth, embrace it. Let it inspire gratitude, presence, and an even deeper appreciation for the people you love. Because in the fleeting nature of life, every moment we share is a gift, and it's up to us to make the most of it. Relationships are among the most profound aspects of our lives, shaping who we are and how we grow. The 15 Stoic truths we've explored together provide a timeless framework for navigating these connections with greater clarity, compassion, and resilience. From recognizing what is within your control to practicing gratitude and embracing impermanence, these principles challenge us to approach relationships as opportunities to cultivate virtue and understanding both with others and within ourselves. Let's take a moment to reflect on some of these transformative ideas. The Stoics remind us that every interaction is a mirror, revealing not only the nature of others but also our own inner state. They teach us to let go of the need to control others, to prioritize quality over quantity, and to practice love without attachment. We've seen how empathy, patience, and forgiveness can work as tools to heal conflict and strengthen bonds, while gratitude helps us appreciate the fleeting beauty of the connections we are fortunate to have. And perhaps most powerfully, we've learned that by embracing the impermanence of life, we can foster deeper, more present relationships unburdened by fear or clinging. These truths are not abstract ideas meant to sit on a shelf. They are practical, actionable insights designed to help us live better. So, which of these ideas resonated most with you? Was it the emphasis on letting go of resentment to reclaim your peace? The reminder to focus on the present moment and truly be there for the people you care about? Or perhaps it was the call to appreciate your relationships while acknowledging their temporary, precious nature? Take a moment to reflect. How could you begin applying even one of these principles to your relationships today? Small, intentional steps can lead to profound change. As we conclude, let's return to the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and his reflections on living in accordance with nature. Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Relationships, like the waves, will always bring challenges, moments of joy, and times of difficulty. But with the principles of Stoicism as our guide, we can stand steady, resilient yet compassionate, present yet unattached. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If these ideas sparked something within you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which truth resonated with you the most? How do you plan to use these principles to transform your relationships? Share your insights in the comments below, and let's learn from one another. And if you're as passionate about exploring timeless wisdom as I am, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss future discussions on Stoic philosophy and its practical applications. Until next time, remember, your relationships and the way you navigate them are opportunities to live with virtue and meaning. Stay present, stay resilient,